we do that by roll call on all of our votes. Just like to remind everybody to please keep their camera on or their microphone on mute, and when you're speaking, please have your camera on. For those who are presenting, either virtually or in person, to make sure that you state your name for the record. And with that, I'll go ahead and ask that we have the roll call be placed.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Okay, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, Lieutenant Governor Howie Morales,
Present.
State Treasurer Laura M. Montoya.
Good morning, present.
Good morning, Member Michael Sanchez. Member Paul Cassidy.
Good morning, present.
Good morning, Member Wendy Trevisani.
Present, good morning.
Good morning, Member Joseph Lujan.
Good morning, present.
Good morning, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I do want to remind everyone that if for some reason the audio goes down or the video feed goes down, then we stop the meeting until we can get that taken care of. So fortunately, that hasn't happened. We hope it doesn't again. So with that, I'll go ahead and ask for an approval of the agenda.
I would move approval of the agenda.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Can another roll please be called?
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Treasurer Montoya,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We're going to item number 3. That's going to be approval of minutes from March 18, 2025 regular meeting. Do we have a motion for approval?
I'll move approval.
We have a motion by Member Trevisani.
Second.
We have a second from Member Lujan. We can have the roll please be called.
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Treasurer Montoya,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We do have a fairly long agenda, so we'll have a lot of good discussion opportunities. We're at consent agenda items number 4 through 14. Please feel free, members, if you have any questions to ask any questions on any of these items. But with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ashley to guide us to those consent agenda items.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. I'll be reading through the consent agenda items now, beginning with item number 4. This was submitted by the Higher Education Department. It is from the New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology. They are requesting approval of capital expenditures for construction of the unmanned aerial system field for $650,000. If approved, approval would be contingent upon the directors and council's receipt and review of an approved certificate of adequate parking. Item number 5 has been submitted by the University of New Mexico. UNM is requesting approval of capital expenditures totaling $2,959,849 for Alvarado Hall elevator installation. And item number 6 has also been submitted by UNM, requesting approval of the acquisition of real property located at 1020 Avenida de Cesar Chavez in Albuquerque. This is for $1,250,000. If approved, approval would be contingent upon the directors and council's receipt of a fully executed warranty deed, a fully executed amendment to the purchase agreement, and submission of an executed easement agreement. Moving on to items number 7 and 8, these have been submitted by Otero County. Item number 7 is a request for approval of the lease of real property located at 56 Cottage Road in Otero County, known as the High Roll Senior Center, to the Sacramento Mountain Senior Services. This is for a consideration of $24,581 per year, with services in lieu of rent contemplated. And item number 8 from Otero is a request for approval of a lease of real property located at 1118 Indiana Avenue in Alamogordo to Otero Arts, Inc. And this consideration is for $16,236 per year, with services in lieu of rent contemplated. Moving on to item number 9, this has been submitted by the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. They are requesting approval of the sale of real property located within the Elena Gallegos Grant, Grecian Avenue and Guadalupe Trail Northwest Harwood Lateral to David Stang for $77,398. If approved, approval would be contingent on 4 items. The first is a fully executed lease agreement. The second, a fully executed quitclaim deed. The third, a fully executed board minutes or resolution from the MRGCD board. And finally, 4th, a favorable appraisal review report from the Taxation and Revenue Department's Property Tax Division. Item number 10, members, has been submitted by Estancia Valley Solid Waste Authority. They're requesting approval of the sale of real property located at 214 South Fifth Street in Estancia to the town of Estancia for a consideration of $224,000. If approved, approval would be contingent upon the receipt of a fully executed purchase agreement and the receipt of a fully executed addendum on addendum number 2, and then finally a fully executed quitclaim deed. So signatures on those documents. Item number 11 has been submitted by the Gadsden Independent School District. Gadsden is requesting approval of the sale of real property located at 2160 NM 192 in San Miguel to the Alto de las Flores Mutual Domestic Water Association for a consideration of $78,410. If approved, approval would be contingent upon the directors and council's receipt and review of a fully executed purchase agreement and a fully executed quitclaim deed. Item number 12 has been submitted by the Village of Eagle Nest. Eagle Nest is requesting approval of the conversion of its emergency operating loan to a grant. This is a $300,000 loan provided by the board in 2021 that would be converted to a grant. All of the funding has been expended. Item number 13 has been submitted by Bernalillo County. Bernalillo County is requesting approval of an extension of its 2025 private activity bond volume cap allocation for the West Mesa Ridge A Apartments project in Albuquerque. The private activity bond volume cap was $28.9 million. And then item number 14 is from Santa Fe County. And Santa Fe County is requesting an extension of its 2025 private activity bond volume cap allocation of $70 million for the Turquoise Trail Apartments project in Santa Fe. And with that, Mr. Chair, members, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the board? Any additional information from staff?
No, Mr. Chair.
Seeing none, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for consent agenda items number 4 to 14.
I'll move approval.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. We can have the roll. Please
Mr.
as
Chairman,
well.
just to clarify the motion, it's motion to approve with the contingencies.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Treasurer Montoya. And that's correct. The motion to approve with the contingencies that have been stated. We can have the roll, please be called.
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Treasurer Matoya,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We're gonna go on to item number 15. That's gonna be into the higher education section. Do we have our friend presenters here? Oh, yeah, thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Joe Brown. I'm the Capital Projects Director for the New Mexico Higher Education Department. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present this morning. I also want to thank Director Leach and her team for working with the departments and the higher education institutions to clarify questions we had on the submission so that we could be on the consent agenda this morning. And thank you for the approval of consent items. For agenda item number 15, the University of New Mexico Health Sciences Center is requesting approval of capital expenditures for new construction of the Sandia Vista Primary Care Clinic. The facility will be located at 9600 Gibson Boulevard Southwest in Albuquerque and will be approximately 16,741 square feet. This request is to expand care services by UNM Health and Hospital System. UNMH assessed their existing clinics prior to initiating the design on this clinic to determine what is working to integrate into this clinic. So this clinic will use a 4-provider pod model with 22 exam rooms. The plan also has 4 consultation rooms, 2 of which are dedicated to behavioral health. There's a staff respite room and a retinal scanner room. There will also be additional outpatient services like their other clinics to include a retail pharmacy, radiology suite, outpatient laboratory, treatment room, and rehabilitation services. Their exterior will look similar to the North Valley Clinic with some minor updates. Site development includes patient parking and loading zones and secured staff parking. There's also a dedicated services loading area, an ambulance loading zone, and a staff exterior patio with regionally appropriate landscaping. All primary care mechanical equipment is going to be located on the roof with interior components within the corridors or an exterior access mechanical fire riser room and electrical room. The building will have a generator sized to provide emergency standby power for the life safety equipment. This project is being funded by the UNM Hospital Capital Renovation Fund for the amount of $19 million. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Enrico Valpato and the UNM team for their comments.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm Enrico Valpato, I'm the Executive Director for Facility Services for the hospital, and with me is Mike Ciccarelli, the COO, and Greg Smith, our Director for Planning and Construction. Mr. Brown gave a pretty thorough description of the expansion clinic that we're wanting to do on Albuquerque Southwest Mesa. We partnered with the county to determine the location to best meet the needs of the community. We anticipate that we're going to be able to serve 21,000 patients a year here and be able to meet the healthcare and specifically the primary service needs for that area of the city. It is a one-stop shop for our patients where they're able to get their primary care needs, including pharmacy, radiology, outpatient, and a treatment room. So all the needs that they have there, as well as some community service space that we put in all of our clinics. Our clinics are based on a model that we've have built throughout the city. And we continue to utilize that structure in how we approach our design and meet the programming needs for our patient delivery. So we are completed design and are currently in an RFP for construction and at this time negotiating for the contract of that. So we're ready to move into construction and can start as soon as July with approval from this board. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are any other presenters gonna give information? No further information. Yeah, members of the board.
Question, thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Always in need of improved medical buildings. I'm on the hospital board here at Christine Benson, so I'm very familiar. My question is, the 21,000 patients, is that, I presume that's patient visits? So it could be less patients could come numerous times, but that's the capacity. And of that 21,000, how much of it is in addition to who you already serve through your system versus it's kind of a relocation or, you know, dealing with overflow?
I'll take it.
I'll go ahead and take it. Mr. Chair, members responding. So good question. The first question first, yes, it's 21,000 visits we anticipate. So it could be the same patient multiple. The second question is a little bit harder to define because we know that we have patients coming from that zip code area now to other clinics within the city. I guess what I would say generally about this, though, is that we know that there's a tremendous amount of unmet need for primary care in New Mexico as a whole, but particularly in that area of the city and in Bernalillo County. So I would expect that we see more and new patients in that location as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have Treasurer Montoya who's joining us online who has a question as well.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you, Governor. I have one question for overall in the medical aspects of this and the cost. We've seen a lot of federal funding issues, in particular in the medical industry. We know that New Mexico is the #1 Medicaid recipient in the country. And I wanted to know, how does all of that play into whatever plans you've had for this particular deal, and how is it going to be impacted based off of some of the issues that we're seeing or hearing about?
Mr. Chair and Treasurer Montoya, very good question. I think like probably everybody in this room, we are watching the reconciliation process very carefully, keeping up with the day-to-day changes. We also know that we don't have anything really final at this time, and so we don't really have a direction to move in until we get that final reconciliation bill. So I think, generally speaking, our mission is to provide healthcare for our community and to take care of our patients. Despite what's happening currently, we have to project for the future and know that there's a lot of unmet need for primary care specifically. So we're going to continue to build primary care access for our patients. So and kind of just watch and see what's happening at the federal level and adjust as necessary.
Governor and thank you for the response. Just one last question, just for the specifics of it. If there are issues with the funding sources from the federal government, what's the secondary plan that you have in place to make sure that this can be completed and have the staffing necessary for it?
Yes, Mr. Chair and Member Montoya. The funding allocation for this project has been in our strategic plan, has already been assigned, so we'll be able to move forward with construction. So that's already being addressed. Any further needs to operate the building will depend on what adjustments need to be as far as staffing. So, but as far as moving forward with this project, it's been the money's already been set aside.
And Mr. Chairman, I completely understand that and agree, but I don't want to have an empty building without providers to be able to provide the service. And so that's what I'm trying to get at is what are we going to do, or what is the game plan for the ifs or whens? What is the strategic plan for if you don't get the funding you need to provide the service providers, the nurses, the doctors, et cetera?
Mr. Chair and Treasurer Montoya, so, I mean, that is a complicated question to answer, but I think what it boils down to, you have to look at our programs and determine determine how we're going to manage healthcare in that environment. As you know, we are required to maintain a net margin, and so we would have to make adjustments to our care delivery and reallocate resources as necessary. Honestly, hope we don't get there, but that's what we would have to do. It would be basically cutting program.
Thank you,
I will say though,
Please finish.
I would just say the primary care is probably one of those things that are going to be required no matter what. We have to have basic health care.
Yeah, thank you for that. Member Cassidy, check your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thanks for bringing this project forward. I've heard this team before. I think we've all heard this team before, and Dr. Richards talk about the fact that we're infrastructure poor in terms of healthcare, the healthcare delivery system. And we've got to tackle it. And we got really way behind for 8 to 10 years. And I know I figured this is part of the process. I really appreciate the fact that you did a community survey to identify within this part of the community, their need and their willingness to access a new facility. Is that unique? That's one of my questions. The second is what is the future in terms of your plan for other service delivery spots like this for the metro area? And I know you've been reaching out around the state, and thank you for engaging with the military and the staff of the military to allow them to have access for military families that show up to the state every 2 years and then can't access healthcare for it. The cost of the facility is nearing $1,000 a square foot. Just curious, and Mr. Alpato talked about the fact that you're negotiating the contract now. Do you expect it'll be any less than that number, or hopefully it will be less than the number? And then the contracting method that you're using to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We go in reverse and cover those two now. Yeah,
Sure.
cover two. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Member Cassidy, I'll start out on the cost per square foot. So we're in a challenging time with tariffs and we've had the last 5 years of high construction costs. So we did come in with a very high cost per square foot with this type of facility. We are in the negotiating stage, so we're not at the stage where we could make that information public, but we will be coming within the budget. We do know that at this point in the stage of the project, and we'll have some capacity for any unforeseen. So we feel confident being able to move forward with this cost. But it is a higher cost with the uncertainty in the market and us being able to make sure that we set enough money aside to plan for that. as we've seen cost in both construction material and labor go up incredibly high over the last several years. So, but we will be under that cost per square footage that we're presenting today, and it will have capacity for some unforeseen circumstances in the future. And hopefully we don't see those and that money can revert back to the hospital. As far as for the project delivery method, we did a RFP for construction, so it's qualifications based, but it does have a component of it that's scores with the price of construction. So we look at both and we split those into scoring on qualifications and those price.
And Mr. Chair, Member Cassidy, your question about the methodology in which we use to cite the clinic. In my experience, this is the first time that we've actually gone that deep into that methodology. And so I think that it was pretty successful. It was a good partnership working with various groups. And I don't foresee us changing that in the future. We do want to continue to build primary care locations in Bernalillo County. And I suspect that we'll use that same methodology to cite those locations.
All right, okay. And would you mind just explaining how many facilities like this we have at UNM in Bernalillo County? I know the North Valley was referenced. Is there another one or two already in operation?
So, Mr. Chair, Member Cassidy, I believe we have between 33 and 40 different locations where we have clinics in the city, in Bernalillo County specifically. So it's in that range. It's a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Quick question on the equipment. I presume you'll have some heavy medical equipment in the new facility, and was there consulted with the equipment providers to make sure that I know last time we had a little issue on the equipment and where it was situated and heaviness of it and all that. Was that addressed on this one?
Mr. Chair, Member Lujan, yes, that was addressed. We brought in our medical equipment vendor and worked in tandem with our architecture and engineering teams. As a slab upgrade facility, we suspect that we don't have those same issues.
Thank you. I think again, it's as the members have stated just on point that this is meeting the need of patients. When it's anticipated about 21,000, it's probably gonna be more than that. But I did have some questions on the capital improvement project numbers, specifically line item 103 and 104. If there's pending approval from HEB, second floor of OR renovation. That was should have been done April 9th. Has there been approval of that at this point?
Mr. Chair, no, there's not been approval of that. We will be bringing that project back. Our challenges on that project is it's within our existing main hospital at 1950
So
building.
that's separate then.
And we're gonna be moving the ORs into the new tower, and then we're gonna come back and backfill those, and we're gonna go from 19 ORs down to 10. Our challenge and why we weren't able to bring it up now is we have to meet the LEED Silver certification for the state statute. And that's very challenging to do when you're renovating a square footage inside of a larger building.
Yeah.
And we're having to have our design professional team look at this problem a little differently than a typical project. And so we're doing our due diligence to make sure that we meet that requirement and may have to do some extra parts to that project to bring it in on that.
So thank you for that explanation. So there's not really any delay on what you're trying to do moving forward with this specific project. Just curious, you know, a lot of times when we're looking from, you know, from a perspective of meeting the patient's needs, I think that's always the goal from healthcare is to meet the patient's needs, provide for whatever the needs are, rather than competing for patients. What is collaboration? Is there any communication with your Presbyterian, your Lovelace, your other would-be competitors, but in reality, they're all providers that are providing that support for our patients? Is there any type of collaboration that takes place when you talk about location and how that's done, this being on the west side? I mean, can you kind of guide us to that?
Mr. Chair, generally, I would say that you're right about the competition part. It isn't competition. All of our mission is to serve the patients of New Mexico. That's why we're here. I will say that generally, we do have frequent conversations with Presbyterian, Lovelace, et cetera. We have good relationships. We maintain those relationships. When it comes to citing this specific clinic, we didn't get Presbyterian or Loveless in a room per se to discuss it. We do look at where they have clinical platforms and sort of navigate away from those areas. We look for areas that are newly developing in the Romeo County area that are healthcare deserts, to use that term, when we look to site these clinics.
I just always wonder about that is, so we don't have duplication of those efforts, but again, it sounds like you guys communicate on many other cases and which is important because again, the overall goal is to serve New Mexicans. So thank you for that. I don't have any further questions. Do any members have any further questions? Any further information from staff?
Mr. Chair, the only thing I wanted to add is I want to thank Director Brown and the UNM team. They have invited Marcos and I, and we will be attending on a Thursday, a working meeting with UNM leadership to learn about their 10-year plans, both at the campus and the hospital, and dive a little bit deeply into upcoming projects and where they're off on existing projects. So I wanted to let the board members know that we're going to be getting, I think, a lot more really helpful, useful information for the many projects that UNM is looking to the future for. And I want to just thank them for that invitation. And we believe it'll be a very helpful meeting for us to attend.
Thank you for that, Ashley. Seeing no further questions, our board entertain a motion.
I would move approval, Mr. Chair.
A motion from member Cassidy. Do I have a second? We have a second by member Lujan. Can we have the roll please be called?
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Treasurer Montoya,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yeah.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you for the information. Treasurer Montoya, you had your hand up. Did you have another point you want?
Governor, that was for earlier, but I don't know how to take it back down. It won't undo.
I believe you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Is the hand away now?
Still there.
It's still waving at us, but at least I know, so I'll just, just refer to you if I see it.
But since I have your attention, I'll be on for about 15 more minutes and then I got to get to class.
Thank you, Treasurer Montoya. Again, thank you for your interventions. We're gonna go on to item number 16, that's real property sales and leases. We're gonna go on number 16.
Governor,
And Mr. Chair,
Governor,
Senator Sanchez, so good to see you.
hi, everybody. Sorry, my computer and me do not get along very well. And so I've been listening, but I haven't been able to say or do anything. But I wanted to vote yes on that last item, if that's appropriate.
Thank you, Senator Sanchez. I appreciate you coming on camera. Yeah, thank you for that.
It's nice. It's nice to see all of you and hope everybody's having a good day.
Thank you. We'll go on to item number 16. That's going to be real property sales and leases, and this will be Clovis Municipal Schools. Do you have representatives who are here in the building with us? Please join us. Will you be providing the presentation today?
Sir,
Will you be providing the presentation for us today?
this is our first time to sit at this type of meeting, and so we were prepared to answer questions in regards to the sale of the property. Our first experience in the position to do that. So we do have a 6-acre plot in Clovis that formerly housed an elementary, Parkview Elementary. It was demolished about 10 years ago. We've gone through the bid process and in meeting the requirements to put this property up for sale. We've worked with Ashley Leach in following the process to be here on the agenda so that we could get approval. We did receive one bid for the property for $240,000 from Griegos and Son. Their plan is to develop that property and put housing on there. And so our next step was to be here at the committee to receive approval for that sale.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I want to say thank you for taking time. It seemed like it was just a few months ago. It was actually almost 2 years ago.
Yes.
that you toured me around the campus. So
Yes.
thank you for taking that time. Ashley, if it's okay, I'm going to yield to you so you can give us a little more background information for the members.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Chair. So let me just pull up my formal notes here electronically. All right, so Mr. Chair, members, This is the sale of 6.7 acres. It's 2 plots of land. One is about 2.07 acres and one is 4.68 acres. The sale is to Nick Griego and Sons Construction. The district, for their information, has owned the property since 1949, but does not have a use for it. And they did go out to bid on this and received one bid from Mr. Griegos. The construction company will be purchasing the property for $240,000, which is slightly higher than the appraised value at $221,000. That's for the combined properties, both appraisal and sale price. Beyond that, Mr. Chair, there's not a lot more of details. We did receive responses from the school district regarding some of our questions. Really appreciate them working with us on that. We received a revised purchase agreement with that both staff and council have reviewed with all of the provisions that we had requested. So there are contingencies on this, Mr. Chair and members, but they are execution contingencies. So a contingency would be a fully executed purchase agreement, although it's in its final form for the staff's review, and a fully executed quitclaim deed. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would stand for any questions as well.
Thank you, Ashley. Are there any questions from board members? Remember that?
Well, yeah, I'm just curious, if the building was demolished 12 years ago, what precipitated the sale now as opposed to 5 years ago last year?
Our facility master's plan, we had not used an outside consultant in over a decade to create and formulate a facilities plan. When we look at the declining enrollment in Clovis, we've held on to that property for 10 years for possible other uses, but our enrollment continues to shrink. And so we've looked at our building and our physical assets, and we're starting to realize through our facility planning process that we no longer need to hold on to those. And so in some of the things that we're doing, we would utilize the funds from the sale of these properties that we're going to continue to come to the board with to remodel, renovate, and do capital improvements to the district facilities.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Governor. Just curious, the ultimate use for the property, and that's after the sale to.
My understanding is they want to develop into housing duplexes.
Great. Big use over there. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
No other questions.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members? I do have a question. So you said that enrollment's been decreasing?
Yes.
Is that correct? You know, we were just there not too long ago at Cannon Air Force Base, and we had a discussion. I believe we had many of the city leaders in a reception afterwards. I thought that they said the population was increasing within the Clovis area.
It is.
So do we know what's the dynamics of the decrease in enrollment?
Mhm. Birth rate's part of it. And so also the shift in the missions for Cannon Air Force Base. When you look at the number of families that we used to have with the F-111 versus what we have for the special operations, these are young men and women that atypically don't bring kids with them to the mission. And so you're seeing the increase in adult population, but a decrease in the number of students that are in the district.
Interesting.
It is an interesting dynamic.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
I want to make sure that Senator Sanchez and Treasurer Montoya, if you have any questions, please feel free. If not, we can move forward. Okay, seeing none, any additional information from staff?
Mr. Chair, no, just the contingencies I already stated.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of this with the contingencies. We have a motion. We have a motion by Member Lujan with the contingencies. Do we have a second?
Second.
Member Travisani with the second. Can we have the roll please be called?
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Treasurer Montoya,
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yeah,
Motion passes.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us for driving up here and joining us today. Move on to item number 17, that's still under real property sales and leases. And this is gonna be the Farmington Municipal Schools to be joining us. Ashley, are you gonna join us virtually or here in person?
Mr. Chair, I believe they may be virtual.
We have our representatives from Farmington here with us today.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, Lieutenant Governor Lujan, and members. We are here with me. My name is Cody Deal, Superintendent, Farmington Municipal Schools. With me, I have Chief Financial Officer Bobby Newland and my Executive Director of Operations, Mr. Isaac Gamboa, and on the line, our attorney as well, Ms. Heather Boone. Thank you for having us today.
Yeah, thank you. Please proceed with the presentation.
Yes, so we're requesting the sale of our old central office located at 2001 North Dustin Avenue. We've owned the property since 1983, and it was put up for sale June 24th or June 21st, maybe of 2020, prior to me becoming the superintendent. So I can't give you much history on the reason as to why, other than the fact that we had several campuses that housed our central office programs, and we consolidated into one. And so we no longer need the facility. We have had some interest in the sale of it, but the cost of renovation has deterred a lot of people from buying. So we received an offer back earlier in the fall for the sale of the property. So we're requesting that approval for that.
Okay, thank you. Any additional information from any of our other guests regarding this? Seeing none, I'll return to board members. Before I do, I want to ask Ashley. Ashley, could you give us some additional information, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members. So I think that was a very good summary. The only other things I would add, the building is about 10,891 square feet. The appraisal did appraise its value at $790,000. That appraisal was acquired in November. The purchase price is $848,000, and it is McDonald's that is the potential buyer in this transaction. And the only other thing I would mention, Mr. Chair, while I'm speaking, is that we do have a couple of contingencies on this. One is a revised and fully executed real estate contract, which is the purchase agreement. That includes revisions requested by staff and council, and 2 is a fully executed quitclaim deed. The school district, I want to thank the superintendent and CFO Newland. They have provided us with the information we need, but they are still working with McDonald's on the changes we've requested to the real estate contract, which is, there were some provisions that we felt should be revisited for the benefit of the school district. So we have requested that they look at those and consider those, which they are doing. They just needed a little bit more time on that, Mr. Chair. And with that, I'll stand for any questions as well.
Thank you, Ashley. Members, do you have any questions? Member Cassidy?
Governor, thank you. Thank you, Superintendent and presentation team. Like Clovis, it's just great to see that our public schools are looking at all of their assets, and then having professionals come in and assist in properly sizing the district in terms of building and real estate. So this is a real positive. And the governor asked about enrollment in Clovis, and I'm just curious, Farmington, how's your enrollment up there? Stable,
Yes.
growing, or shrinking?
Sorry. Yes, members, Mr. Chair, members, our enrollment is declining. We are about 500 students down within the last 5 years, probably. But we are seeing an uptick in production here in the basin. So hopefully we see a increase coming. But yes, we are very typical with the rest of the state and for the majority of the state, and we are down. So about 11,000 down to 10,500.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Seeing no additional questions, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
I would move approval with the contingencies.
We have an approval with the contingencies. Do we have a second? Well, no, signing with a second. We can have the roll please be called.
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, and thanks for joining us, and look forward to hearing more of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go on to number 18, that's under private activity bonds. With Housing New Mexico, who's requesting a private activity bond volume cap allocation. We have Izzy joining us with this, joining us today, or you're gonna be
I'll be
presenting?
presenting.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Jacobo Martinez. I am the Housing Development Assistant Director for Housing New Mexico, New Mexico Mortgage Finance Authority. With me, I have Christy Wheelock, who is our 4% Housing Tax Credit Manager for Housing New Mexico. I also have Tom Andrews and Jonathan Andrews, who are the principals for Thomas Development Group. And also online, they have Natalie Green, who is the Housing and Neighborhood Revitalization Administrator for the City of Las Cruces. Appreciate you guys having us, and thank you so much for letting us be. So for you is a request for approval for a $23,350,000 volume cap allocation for the creation of a 144 unit apartment project targeting households with children in Las Cruces, New Mexico. This project is the second phase of the Peachtree Canyon project, whose bonds were approved in 2024. The project will consist of 48 one-bedroom units at approximately 618 square feet, 48 two-bedroom units at approximately 850 square feet, and 48 three-bedroom units at approximately 1,050 square feet. 138 units will be income restricted to households earning no more than 60% of the area median income, and 6 units will be income restricted to households earning no more than 30% of the area median. An inducement resolution for the project was approved by MFA executive staff in April 2025, excuse me. And prior to bringing the inducement resolution to MFA executive staff, notices were sent to the City of Las Cruces for community acknowledgement. The first was required under the International Revenue Code, Section 42M1A2, and the second was required under Section 581810 of the New Mexico statutes. The City of Las Cruces has expressed support for this project. The volume cap is, if the volume cap is approved today, a bond resolution will be prepared for the MFA board approval in June. MFA will also conduct a Public Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act, or a TEFRA, hearing after publishing public notice on MFA's website informing how to participate in the hearing. That's a hearing for more public participation for this project that's required by the IRS. Housing New Mexico staff has reviewed the proposed project, including the market study and the developer's performance spreadsheet, and have determined that the proposed financing of the project is financially feasible, and the project will comply with Housing New Mexico's design requirements, as well as complied with all thresholds of the qualified allocation plan as passed in 2024. With that, I will hand the presentation over to Mr. Andrews, who is the principal for Thomas Development Group. Thomas Development offers comprehensive development services for affordable residential multifamily developments in South Dakota, New Mexico, and Texas. And to date, Thomas Development has completed 24 projects totaling 1,182 affordable housing units across New Mexico, Arizona, and Texas.
Thank you, Jacobo. Good morning, Chairman Morales, board members. Thanks, Jacobo, for giving us a little bit of background on who we are. I have been actively developing affordable housing in New Mexico for 25 years. And up to this date, all of these projects have been wholly owned or partially owned by nonprofit organizations. I've worked with community development corporations, public housing authorities, community land trusts. So we're very excited to partner with the City of Las Cruces and move on to develop the second phase of Peachtree Canyon. We do have a nonprofit partner in this project, and it's New Mexico Housing and Community Development Corporation, who is based out of Truth or Consequences, and they've been in the affordable housing arena for, I think, about a dozen years, and own 10 or 12 properties themselves. So we're excited about moving on to phase 2. We were before you last year in 2024 for the first phase of Peachtree. We are in construction there. We're approximately 35% complete. We're moving forward with hopefully occupancy this fall. And we're excited about getting the second phase started.
Jonathan, do you have a few comments you'd like to make?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Morales and, board members. So as far as the timeline for Peachtree for phase two, just wanted to point out a couple, bullet points that we do have, complete 100% full construction drawings over in the city of Las Cruces. We should have, they should be permit ready to pick up, as Jacobo mentioned. If we receive the bond cap allocation today, we will be moving to the MFA board next month for the home funds for the rest of their funding. We have started, we've already completed our value engineering for our construction and architectural reviews. We are starting upon approval, construction closing calls and our due diligence calls on Monday, May 26th, which is an important, milestone. So that gives us, we're projecting a construction start date, which we feel and the city of Las Cruces concurs is realistic in August. And so we'll start closing calls and, for the next 60 days, we're using the same bank, and the same tax credit syndicator. So the development team is staying the same. And that's also, one of the things I'd like to point out is keeping the same development team that's, resulted in us actually being able to produce, our cost per unit. We're at all in $285,000. Which I think was pretty incredible in this environment, and it's realistic. We've worked extremely hard with our contractor and architect to come up with an amazing product that's, gonna put more units on the ground, which will, equates to more affordable housing options for, the people of in the city of Las Cruces. So we're extremely, excited, and it's just one of the main things I wanted to point out as well. But we're open to any questions as far as timeline goes, and
Thank you for that. Any additional information that you'd like to present?
Nothing additional from us. Thank you.
Okay. Ashley, is there any additional information that you or Marcus would like to present?
no, we can put it.
Any questions from board members? Member to sign.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think, like healthcare, the state is in dire need of more affordable housing. So appreciate what you're doing. I think you mentioned phase one is 35% complete with occupancy intended for fall. Just wondering, if you had any surprises during that phase, is it on time, on budget? And if it isn't on time, is there kind of any kickback? I think of like constructing a house where if your builder doesn't complete it on time, sometimes you get, some sort of bonus or some sort of kickback. So that is one question you're very confident of. It seems like a lot to be done before fall. So just kind of wondering if this is a precursor to kind of what you expect in the next phase.
At this point, we're on time and on budget. We do expect there will be possible variations coming up, accommodations for weather. So far, we haven't had any issues as far as getting the product on site, and we haven't had any pushback as far as price increases. So it's going as expected. And let me clarify, we are going to have some buildings come online in the fall, but we will have buildings coming online over, I think, a 4 or 5 month period starting in October, and the completion date actually runs into, I believe it's February of 2026. So we're we have people calling already to get on a waiting list, and we're trying to get buildings online as quick as possible and get families moved in.
Thank you. And is it an application process for people to receive, or does it depend? I think you mentioned different kind of stratifications of income levels and unmet need.
Yeah, it is income qualified housing. The management company will develop a waiting list based upon a data application to the project, and they'll go through an income qualification process according to HUD and MFA requirements.
And if I can add, MFA will be doing long-term monitoring for these projects. Any projects that we have, LIHTC tax dollars in or any of our other funding in, we do long-term monitoring for the length of the project, which means we'll be out there at least once every 3 years, if not once a year, to make sure that income qualifying is completed as required.
Thank you. And then are they one-term leases with the option to renew, and are there like inflation clauses built in? Just sort of operates like a regular.
Sure, I'm Christy Bibak. This is a non-transient program, so they have to sign at least a 6-month lease. And typically they sign a 1-year lease, and the rents don't change during that period of time. Sometimes the utilities can change, but that's with, I think, a 90-day notice that the utility amounts can change. But there is a utility allowance that's provided to the residents that's deducted from the maximum amount of tax credit rent. So if it's $700 and the utility allowance is $50, they only paid $650.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Thank you, Governor. I think I'm a little hard hearing. I think I misheard. What did you say the volume cap was again?
Mr. Chair, Member Lujan, the volume request today is $23,350,000.
I thought it was different than what I had down here, so thank you for that. Great project. That's fantastic. Thank you for doing that, guys.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you for the presentation. Thanks for being here. Another great project. I'm astounded though, just looking at the kind of big picture. We have a $41 million budget, and it's amazing the city of Las Cruces is coming up with $6 million in cash. And how unusual is that, right? Are you seeing more of that? And is that needed because of the obviously cost? This is an obvious question. Obviously the costs are out of sight, right? And tax credits, this is 4%, it's producing 16 million out of the 41 million. There's a combination of permanent funding sources that are 3 different programs. I assume it's because of the severance tax, the housing trust fund, severance tax proceeds and so forth. And Mr. Martinez, when you get to your report later on, it'd be nice to point out in your report kind of where this project falls in terms of accomplishments and how you're spending about $40 million on the severance tax program.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Cassie, thank you so very much for that comment. Yes, our next report will definitely add that information. And I think what we're seeing since I've been with Housing New Mexico is that stack of money that's needed in order to complete this project is growing and growing. It used to be there was a stack of maybe 3 or 4 sources that would get a project completed. Now we're up to averaging 6, 7 funds, different pots of money needed to construct these projects. And I do want to say thank you to the city of Las Cruces, who has been very, very generous and very, very proactive in affordable housing and putting dollars in and providing tax breaks, land tax breaks for these projects. And with those cities that do that, we are seeing developments moving towards there because those subsidies really do help out.
All right. Thank you. And Governor, one more if I could. So 41 million. And so what is the cost per unit? And these are 60% units, which is terrific. Approximately, what is that cost? And just kind of compare it with how that's progressing over time.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Member Cassidy, the cost per unit right now is about $285,000 per unit. To give you an idea, we just completed our 9% low-income housing tax round, and the average cost per unit in that was about $320,000 per unit. So we are seeing an increase in that cost year over year, especially since COVID. And we're seeing those increases, yes, in hard construction costs, but we're also seeing them in a lot of the soft costs as well. Insurances, legal services, things of that nature. So since COVID, we've really seen that those costs increase. This falls way below the average cost per unit that we're seeing for the low-income housing tax credit. So we're really happy to see that.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. And one more, if I could. Where the 23 million that's being allocated here, where does that leave us in terms of available volume cap? And is it spoken for? How's the demand for that?
Mr. Chair, Member Cassidy, thank you for that question. So after the 23 million, if the $23 million moves for approval, then I think we'll have about $22 million left in the private activity bond. And we do have some projects lined up that are asking. 4% have really become quite a commodity. We're not just seeing that in New Mexico, we're seeing that nationally. And we have been in discussions with staff, State Board of Finance staff, to talk about how we want to tackle that for the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Staff, do we have any additional information?
At this time, Chairman.
Okay. That was a very good presentation, so thank you for answering the questions. With that, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion. Do you have additional
Mr.
information?
Chair, I just want to make sure that if this, I think that there's an extension with the motion. I just want to make sure that that gets included in the motion.
Yeah, Lieutenant Governor, that is correct. The request, since it's so close to July and the expiration of the volume cap is on July 1, Housing New Mexico did ask for an extension in conjunction with the volume cap. So the agenda should reflect that. I just wanted to point it out.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that reminder. Do we have a motion for approval with the extension that's been requested? We have a motion for approval by Member Lujan. Do we have a second?
I would second that. This is Michael Sanchez. I would second it.
We have a second by Senator Sanchez. Thank you. If we can have the roll, please, Nicole.
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yeah.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Congratulations on that. And again, that's been passed. The motion is passed with the extension. Thank you so much. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We'll go on to item number 19. That's going to be presentations that are given to us by UNM on upcoming property acquisition. Thank you. Who's going to start us off today?
Right, sure. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Joe Brown, Capital Projects Director for HED again. Today, we're gonna talk about property acquisition by UNM. This one's kind of complex, and so Director Leach and I had a conversation that perhaps a presentation would be good to do so that you understand what's going on before it would come to the board next month. NMHED did approve this project at our May 13th Capital Outlay Committee meeting. And so we're already approved. We're going to move it over for you next month. I'll introduce Mr. Tom Neal here. He's the Director of Real Estate for UNM to go over the information.
Thank you, Joe. I'd like to introduce our team if I could at the outset here. Leah Murray is our Associate Director who's helped facilitate this transaction. Christine Landavazo is with Senior Attorney with our University Counsel's Office. And Justin Horowitz with the Rhodey Law Firm who is doing the heavy lifting with the other side on this transaction. So.
Thanks for that introduction, Tom. I wanted to note for the board and for their benefit that I serve as outside counsel at the university, but also sit as an attorney with the Rhodey Law Firm. If that name sounds familiar, other lawyers at the firm serve as your bond counsel. I've spoken with your executive and your legal counsel about my participation today. And folks were comfortable with me attending with that disclosure. So I just wanted to share that with the board.
Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll give kind of an overview of this project because this is a very unique project for the university. We're going to ask the Board of Finance to approve an acquisition of a office research building on the island of Maui. This is a really favorable financial transaction for the university. So I'll go kind of step back in time and just kind of go through the history, how we got involved in this property, the lease agreement, and then kind of where we see the financial advantage to the university and how we anticipate, if this is approved, to manage the property and generate the financial returns that we anticipate. Back in 1993, UNM's Center for Advanced Research Computing won an award or contract to set up the Maui High Performance Computing Center in the Maui Research Park. The intent of this was to set up a facility that provided state-of-the-art computational resources for the Department of Defense through the Air Force. There's an installation on top of Haleakala volcano that has a set of radars and telescopes that track objects entering and leaving Earth's atmosphere and also space objects. So this facility is highly secured and has a pretty profound Department of Defense component to it. So in 1993, won the award. We entered into a build-to-suit lease agreement for a property in the research park at 550 Lapoa Parkway. The building is about 31,000 square feet on 2.69 acres. And we entered into a lease with a private entity. That entity sold the property in 2000. We entered into a new lease with the new owner of the property. That new lease was financed through certificates of participation that are very analogous to bonds. And so the asset was held in trust by a trustee. It's now Bank of New York Mellon. And we entered into a 25-year lease with annual renewal options. Every year we go to the regions and renew this lease. We've done that for the last 24 years. And this is the last year of the lease. The lease expires in June of 2025. There's two documents that really govern the transaction. There's a master lease document, and then there's an indenture agreement. The master lease document provides for a purchase option of $9,165,000 that opened up on June 2010. The kind of more important part of this is in the indenture agreement, it names the university as the residual beneficiary. And so when the certificate holders are paid off, the terms of the master lease agreement are satisfied, all assets held by the trust are conveyed to the university. And so we're at that point in time where we'd like to execute the purchase option. And then we've been working with counsel on the mechanics of closing this transaction. Over this, and if I could back up just a little bit, over the term, in 2000, we lost our contract. We sublet the facility to the University of Hawaii. And we've sublet the property for the duration of this lease agreement. In 2010, the University of Hawaii lost the contract to a private defense contractor. That award was challenged. The challenge was upheld. And from that point forward, we sublet it to the federal government. And so we've done that since the inception of this agreement. And what we're going to come back to you guys next month is actually request an approval to acquire the property. And the financial benefit of this, in place right now, the federal government currently leases a facility. They currently pay $850,000 a year net lease payments. What we've done throughout the term of this is our master lease payment, we generally use the funds coming from the sublease tenant to pay that obligation. So we've had this property at very little cost to the university for this whole period of time. And the federal government has secured another site in the research park. And they anticipate starting construction in the near term. They'd like to enter into a new lease post-closing. That new lease will be $992,000 per year on a net term. So we won't have any maintenance obligation, repair obligation. It'll be net cash to the university. And from that point, we think they'll be in there about 2 years. And then we're trying to determine what our exit strategies are to lease it, continue to lease it to a third party or sell the asset. But it has about a $7 million net benefit to the university. So that's generally how this is set up. Justin, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or Christine?
Governor, board members, I think good description. I think my takeaways for the high level are, the property has been purchased, essentially, not very paid for without purchase, right? Over the life of the lease, we come to the end of the certificates of participation transaction. There is no more further obligation, and the property is sitting there the, transaction is set up in a way that would allow for the, as Tom said, the, funds to flow through and then ultimately flow back to the university, as the beneficiary. We've been working with, Bank of New York, Mellon as trustee, to develop documents to memorialize that. We have local counsel in Hawaii who is helping navigate the unique sort of legal issues that come up in a real estate transaction in Hawaii. We're eyeing a June 30 closing for the transaction. And we've just shared in the last week draft documents and are awaiting with the trustee and are awaiting responses from their local counsel.
There's a couple other, I think, things to add. The purchase option, 9,165,000. Our appraisal is 5.9. And the way this is structured is we would execute our purchase agreement, 9,165,000. That money will be returned to us immediately post-closing when the trust is discharged. So it's 9,165,000 going out, and then that money will be refunded to us when the trust is discharged. In addition to the real property, there's $1,040,000 that sits in a rental reserve trust that'll also be conveyed back to the university. So the net benefit of the transaction is right around $7 million. And I think, again, the Rody Law Firm is working on the mechanics of that transaction. It's a little unusual, obviously. Typically our requirement is to pay, market value for the property. And so there'll be an interesting financial exchange, but at the end of the day, the university will be made whole.
Good, thank you for that additional information. I think that was a great point that you just made right now. I think that I'm glad that you included that in the presentation. With that, I'll go ahead and just turn it over to board members, see if they have any further questions.
I do have one, Governor. First of all, you just mentioned appraisal, Tom. So will that be included in the package?
Yes.
When it's submitted, and it's 5.7 million, I think, the 5.9 million. And does that include the deferred maintenance that this facility might have? I assume it would take that into account, right?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, it does account for that. We've actually had a separate that will be included in your board package, building condition assessment. There's about $768,000 of deferred maintenance, principally aging mechanical systems, gaskets on the windows, and then some deteriorating grout in the CMU structure. And we're going to assess at what point in time do we want to clear those deferred maintenance items. The federal government has total responsibility for maintaining the asset, but we're going to want to make sure that we protect it going beyond a 2-year lease term as we contemplate how we might want to dispose of the asset or continue to lease it. And if I may add just one other point, we have been in talks with the University of Hawaii has expressed interest in the property when the federal government vacates. So we're going to continue to have those conversations, and hopefully that'll kind of crystallize what our exit is ultimately.
One follow-up, if I could, Governor, and that is, does UNM research, are they still involved? Is this a beneficial facility for students or staff and so forth at UNM?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, it started off that way. There was tremendous educational resources being put to this, and then an academic benefit. When we lost the contract, those benefits went away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Thank you, Governor. What's the intended purpose of the proceeds? What do you plan on doing with the net proceeds?
So initially we use those to cure any deferred maintenance. We'll kind of set funds aside for that. Ultimately, that's going to be a decision of our regents. And when we come back next month, we'll have probably a better, more definitive answer on how those proceeds will be utilized.
Okay, and then is it on a triple net lease with the federal government?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, it is triple net.
Any further questions? Seeing no further questions, do we have any additional information from staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I believe council wants to make a couple of comments.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. So I guess a couple quick announcements. I think at the end of last year, I don't think I was able to tell y'all that I took over the director of the Government Counsel and Accountability Bureau within the New Mexico Department of Justice. This is Zachary Chandler, who is providing counsel to the board. I am also available for any questions for the board. For this particular item, and I spoke with DFA General Counsel, George here. Kind of in reviewing these, and there's a lot of moving parts, and similar to Mr. Horowitz, because of all of the different moving parts and items, our office has to do our own internal conflicts checks and make sure all of these items are there. So when we were kind of going through this item and just the age of the item and all of the different moving parts and contracts associated with this particular sale, our office determined in order to preserve any future conflicts or any viewing of impropriety that may be associated with this item, we would not be able to provide any legal guidance on this particular one item. So we spoke with DFA General Counsel. We've come to an agreement for this particular item. George may stand for questions to the board.
So the board understands for the purposes of this particular item, item that's being brought by the university, the board can ask me questions. I'll represent you as legal counsel and work with board staff to make sure all your questions get answered.
Okay, thank you for the questions from board members. Ashley, any additional information?
No, Mr. Chair, just want to thank the UNM team and Director Brown for bringing this information onto the board. We will receive the packet, I am sure, here in about a week and start working through those documents, work with Mr. Hippolyte to determine whether there's any follow-up or anything like that. He's already provided some excellent summaries to staff on this that we will include in the documents that go to the board.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ashley. And because these are presentations, there is no action needed that has to be taken on this. Thank you for that information that's presented.
Thank you.
We'll follow up.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Do we need volunteers for due diligence? Especially in the colder months, like, I'm available.
I tried to get your real estate office out there.
FYI.
We'll go on to item number 20 under presentations. This will be a presentation on municipal bond market volatility and activity.
And Mr. Chair, we have our financial advisors joining virtually, and we will share the presentation slide deck.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is David Paul with Fiscal Strategies Group. We're the financial advisors to the Board of Finance, and I'm joined by my colleague, Louis Choi of Public Resources Advisory Group, to give you an update on, in advance of the two different bond sales that we'll be undertaking over the course of the next month, to give you a sense of what's been going on in the tax exempt market amid all the various issues creating degrees of turmoil both in the stock market and the bond market. Today itself was a pretty calm day, but we've had a lot of ups and downs along the way. And I wanted to have Louis Choi, who manages our the day of sale activities for the Board of Finance, just give you a run through of his impressions of what's been going on over the past several months.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. As you know, there has been a great amount of tumult in the financial markets since late March and into early April, especially with the reactions to Liberation Day and the announcements of various tariffs and its expected impacts on the global economy. If you couldn't mind flipping to the next slide after my vacation photos of New Mexico. This is a graph of two of the important market indexes on the bottom part of the page, the 10-year Treasury, as well as the S&P 500 representing fixed income and equities. And I have laid out on the top the various high-level tariff activities that were related during the past 8 weeks. What began as tariffs and sanctions only against auto parts and Venezuela in the week of March 30th really turned into a full-blown, potentially trade war with the announcement of Liberation Day. And as a result of that, there was considerable concerns over what would happen to the U.S. economy and the global economy as a whole. And when other countries chose to indicate that they would take a retaliatory action, we saw that the markets began to really understand that perhaps what's in the cards is a global recession. And for the ensuing 2 days after that, there was a decline both in the S&P 500 and a decline in interest rates. But then as the tariffs heated up, there was actually even more fear of what might actually mean perhaps a decoupling of the U.S., the primacy of the U.S. currency as a global reserve currency and the safe haven of treasuries themselves. And what you see in that blue line, the following week, that yellow week, is really a rapid rise in treasury interest rates. 50 basis points is a huge movement, quite honestly, in the course of a week. And that's exactly what happened. At the beginning of that was not indication of any rebounding of economic health, but rather just really a fear of what would happen to U.S. interest rates. Later on, what you'll see in the red items in terms of tariff activity is really some attenuation of those tariff events when various exemptions, pauses, and so forth were put out. And the stock market began to recover. But nevertheless, tariff talks and tariff-related activities continued for the ensuing 2 weeks, and the rates continued to maintain high levels as the continued threat of decoupling of markets existed. But during the last 4 weeks, perhaps after the break for Good Friday, we've seen more stability in the markets and normalization, especially with the last 3 weeks where most of the activity has been related to reduction in tariff threats, the elimination of auto tariff stacking, the US and UK supposedly reaching a trade deal, and then finally, just this past week, announcements that US and China will agree to lower tariffs for 90 days while they continue their negotiations. And so now the markets, in a way, as you can tell, it's kind of at the similar, albeit higher levels than where we started before all of this and the crisis. So all of this is somewhat reflective of our confidence that the upcoming sales would be successful, although interest rates are higher than what they have historically been. The next slide. The next slide, we show what it looks like in terms of our particular market, which is indicated by the 10-year MMD Municipal Market Data Index, which is for AAA rated state level GOs, and that's in the red line. It's lower than treasury rates because that reflects tax exemption that exists in our particular market. And what you notice, and then the bottom half of the page shows the daily change for that index. And what you'll notice is that actually the municipal bond market reacted even worse than the treasury market. Yes, the treasury market ramped up 50 basis points over the course of the week, but the municipal bond market was moving more than 25 basis points a day for 3 consecutive days before really reacting. You'll see that on April 10th, really realizing that it had overshot the levels that it should have been and declining significantly. But that was a tumultuous week for the market. But since then, the daily moves have largely been much more stabilized. And you'll see that the municipal bond market has gained back some of its losses. That is, has declined in interest rates gradually over the past 4 weeks, as you can see how the red line gradually drifts down, even as the blue line has largely stayed within our trading band. Next slide. But all of that is to say, I mean, there has been periods of market volatility. Certainly from a historical context, while that 1 week was significant in terms of its movements, we have largely recovered, and that has not seemingly been much of a paradigm shift. At the bottom part of the page, we show what is somewhat, I think it was about 15-year history of where 10-year Treasury and 10-year MMD, the same two data spot rates that we've been graphing up above and where they have been. You'll notice that there's been periods certainly of great disruption related, for example, to COVID, at the onset of COVID in March of 2020. And even in earlier times, there's certainly been differences in terms of the market relationships. We've now kind of, in the last several years, a couple years rather, since 23 probably, thereabouts, stabilized at a point where the trading advantage of municipals is very strong, and we've kind of gotten used to that. And the rapid reversal of that during that week of April 6th was really jarring for the market. But nevertheless, the market has continued to function and perform well, and people have continued to bring bids to the market and bring transactions to the market. And certainly the disruption is nowhere near where the events of COVID or the Great Recession, which would have predated the periods here, had exhibited. Next slide. And indeed, we did see, as I was mentioning, some disruption during that period. Here we have graphed on the top part of the page the expected issuance, which is never exactly the same as the actual amount of issuance that has happened for each of the weeks. You'll notice that there's always some difference, but for the most part, before the week of the 6th, largely people had been able to sell the amount of bonds that they had intended for the most part. But during the week of the 6th, when there was a huge amount of pressure, you'll see that the actual amount of sales was somewhere around 40% of the amount that people wanted to sell. In the subsequent week, they were about 3/4 and about 80% the week after that. It's not until 3 weeks ago that we've really kind of began to be able to catch up, if you will, with the actual issuance supply actually outpacing some of the expected amounts. And on the bottom part of the graph, we've indicated the amount of competitive sales that managed to come to market during that time. And again, that's the same story, not just looking at beyond just looking beyond the aggregate. We do see a dip in that competitive volume supply, but nevertheless, we've now picked back up and have been steady at around or slightly above $2 billion per week, which is mostly the average for the current year. And at the very bottom part of the page, you'll see the number of large transactions similar to the upcoming GO bond issuance for the state, as well as the severance tax bonds. Those kinds of transactions have been successfully done. Next page. We also thought it important to look not only at the fact that the transactions had been successfully priced, but whether or not the levels themselves have been attractive. And there's a lot of information on this page. What the focus here is that mostly the large transactions that have come to market have strong ratings like the state has in the AA category or higher for the most part. They have been able to get a good number of bids. For the most part here, even through the weeks where it was tumultuous, they were able to get at least 5-7 bids. In some cases fewer, Anne Arundel had only 4, but still a healthy number of bids. And in terms of the overall spreads that one sees relative to the AAA GO index, they were still considered reasonable for the most part. There was a number of transactions in here that probably have slightly wider spreads, but they have their own phenomenon related to that. For example, Illinois Regional Transportation District, there's a large supply of Illinois paper due to the troubles at the state and in Cook County and the Chicago area that has widened those spreads there just overall in the market. And that was not necessarily related to the recent events, but much more their own dynamics. But overall, we see that the markets were able to function for the most part, even during the most tumultuous times. Next slide. And what we see in the more recent transactions is further stability and an increased number of bidders participating. Now we are in a state where it's often more than 5 bidders on specific transactions, is as many as 9, and the bidding, as indicated by sort of the cover spread, that is the difference between the winning bid and the second place bid, has gotten tightened, which indicates to us at least seemingly a level of market efficiency with these bids. And that concludes my formal presentation. We're happy to open up to any comments or questions folks might have about the state of the market.
So just to, by way of context, staff first raised with us the question of what our feelings were about the tenor of things in the market for the upcoming sales, really a couple months ago. And we prepared this data for staff, and then Ashley believed it was useful to have this material available for the board. We have both the general obligation sale and severance tax bond sales coming up. And I think really the purpose of this was to give a sense of the lay of the land. And really what we've seen is after a brief period of turmoil, a return to a fair degree of stability. We've seen both in the equity markets and the bond markets, we'll have days like yesterday, where in the wake of the Moody's downgrade of the U.S. credit, there was a brief period of spike upward in the Treasury yields, but then that settled back down by the end of the day, or really by the middle of the trading day. And today we were in the market for a different transaction, and you would not know that had even happened. But with that, we'd like to open it up for questions or thoughts or anything that the board members might have questions about.
Thanks for the presentation, for putting that together and the detail that was provided. I don't have any questions, but I want to turn it over to board members.
I do, Governor. Thank you for the presentation. I think it was useful to hear this. I'm curious about investor reception for paper. What's the mix of investors? Has that changed at all recently as a result of any market dynamics? Still strong demand for New Mexico paper. And then comment, if you will, on the recommendation of a 5-year call versus a 10-year non-call, and how that is likely to benefit us. That's all I have.
Sure, I'll be happy to start answering the question, and David, please feel free to jump in. Overall, the market dynamics have not changed that much. I think there is still strong reception for New Mexico paper, as well as municipal market credits in general. This past week, there's been an influx of funds. I think at the end of the day, municipal investors are driven a lot by true retail, who are able to take advantage of the tax exemption aspect of it to get the best rate of return. And they are probably, ironically, maybe not the smartest people in the market, in the sense that when rates are high, they come in and buy a lot more. And indeed, rates are higher than they have been for a number of years. And this creates a new attractive opportunity for them. And that actually dovetails well with the second part of your question, which is why we're choosing to have a 5-year call. Indeed, rates are high in comparison to a historical perspective. And whereas, it had made sense to lock in interest rates for the entire duration of the bonds when interest rates were extremely low in 2020, in 2021, 2022, and so forth, that's not so much the case now. Within the context of recent history, we believe that when we ran a detailed analysis about what the probable outcome would be for these bonds, by incorporating a 5-year call, we believe that at the end of the 5 years, there will be an opportunity to refinance the bonds such that it would save the state money in comparison to having a non-callable structure that would restrict us and prevent us from being able to do economic refundings.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member.
I would just,
Please, go ahead, Dave.
I was simply going to add that just reflective of what Louis said, in the market today, we saw a transaction that was completely dominated by institutional investors, whether individual investors, either via bond funds, which has become one of the ways that individuals buy, and also the separately managed accounts, which have become an increasing share of the buy side of the market, with almost no participation, for example, from the insurance companies.
It's helpful. Thank you.
Any further questions? Ashley, do we have any additional information that we wanted to present?
Mr. Chair, no, thank you. We just appreciate Louis and David joining us today.
Yeah, thank you both for joining us and providing us that information.
Thanks very much.
We're gonna go on to bonding programs. That's gonna be item number 21 through 23. We'll take them individually. Really, so good to have you back here with us. Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor, members of the board, good morning. Good to be before you this morning. I was in Silver City last night, so glad to be here to present this agenda item. Before you, you have the authorizing and delegating resolution. This is item 21 for the state of New Mexico severance tax bond series 2025A in the maximum principal amount of $292 million. These bonds are a series of long-term bonds customarily issued by the Board of Finance to fund legislatively appropriated projects. And it's been a few years since we've actually issued long-term bonds, the last one being in 2022. We did a couple of series, but because of the legislative preference to fund things from general fund proceeds rather than bonds, but there is a need for long-term bonds this year, so that's why we are proceeding with this item. So this resolution is very similar to the authorizing resolution for the 2022 A and B bonds that I mentioned just now. In that it authorizes the issuance and public sale of these bonds. It sets the parameters for the final terms of those bonds, including a maximum amount of, as we've said, of $292 million. Authorizes maturities extending no longer than July 1st, 2035, and a maximum true interest cost of 7%. It also authorizes and describes the method of sale for the bonds by way of a public competitive sale, approves the form of a preliminary official statement to be used in connection with the marketing and sale of these bonds, and improves the continuing disclosure undertaking, setting forth the board's responsibility to provide ongoing disclosure relating to the bonds. It also provides the form, terms, and details of the bonds, addresses the various projects to be financed with the proceeds of these bonds, and pledges the amounts in the severance tax bonding fund to the repayment of the Series 2025A bonds. It also incorporates provisions relating to the execution, delivery, registration, transfer, and exchange of the bonds, and creates the various funds and accounts necessary for the proper administration of the bonds. And for their investment and proceeds as well. The resolution includes covenants, including the covenant relating to the collection of severance taxes and the maintenance of the excludability of interest from federal income taxation for these bonds. A long way of saying these are tax exempt bonds. And it delegates, importantly, to the executive officer, Secretary Probst, or to Ashley Leach, the authority to determine the final terms on the sale date. Within the parameters established by the board through the adoption of this resolution, and to take other actions in furtherance of the resolution and the issuance and sale of the bonds. Board staff and bond and tax counsel anticipate that the proceeds generated by the sale of these bonds will be applied to fund projects to which severance tax bond proceeds have been appropriated by legislation enacted in the 2024 and 2025 legislative sessions. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Louis. Any questions that the board members may have? No further information from staff?
Mr. Chair, the only thing I would mention is there's a small set of projects that are being funded with this $292 million. And they are all statewide projects. It's a total of 20 projects. We worked very closely with both the Infrastructure Division Director, Director Billingsley, as well as LFC staff during the session when they were contemplating a long-term sale to ensure that projects were included that would be more shovel-ready and expended quickly, since this is a tax-exempt issuance. So I do a list of the projects. Those will be appended in June when we finalize our review of readiness and other matters for those projects, as Mr. Carrasco mentioned. But it's a handful of NMSU, a couple of UNM projects, several projects that are overseen by the General Services Department. That includes the completion of the forensic lab, the Behavioral Health Institute, some correctional facility work, and then some statewide parks funding going to energy, minerals, and natural resources, administrative courts, statewide improvements, as well as the C&M Film School construction. So just wanted to share that, that we were very intentional on that project list, and hopefully can fund all of those given our due diligence during the session to make sure they were ready to go.
Any question?
And just follow up to Ashley. So this says 292 million. Are you suggesting that it'll be lower as a result of that? And then this is the maximum amount of long-term debt we anticipate as a result of this last session, right?
Yes, correct, Mr. Chair and Member Cassidy. So yeah, if all of the projects come forward, the project funding would be 292, but given an anticipated premium, we'll be borrowing probably, I think it was around 272 is what we're expecting right now. I think, although that might be the general obligation. They're both exactly, they're like the exact same amount. So yeah, we're looking around that range for actual.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, this is an action item, correct? We will be taking a vote on this?
Yes.
Okay, seeing no further questions, do we have a motion for item number 21?
So moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Whoever. That's you, Sanchez?
Yes.
Senator Sanchez with the second? Well, the roll please be called.
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you for that. I believe you have the next two
The next
presentations.
few are mine, yes.
Well, item number 22, authorizing resolution for State of New Mexico severance tax notes, series 2025, maximum amount. 620 million. Go ahead.
Yes, Lieutenant Governor, members of the board, you have before you the authorizing resolution for the state of New Mexico severance tax notes, series 2025 SA, in the maximum principal amount of 620 million. This transaction is structured nearly identically to what we did last year, where half the SA1 is attributed to legislative appropriations and set-asides, and the SA2 note will fund the deposit to the Capital Project Development and Reserve Fund to be invested, and proceeds of that fund being sent over to the Capital Projects Development Fund for funding for smaller projects pursuant to the House Bill 254, I believe, in the 2024 legislative session. So these notes are two of a series of short-term bonds customarily issued by the board to finance, as I said, legislatively appropriated projects and the statutory set-asides for water, tribal infrastructure, and colonial infrastructure projects, and also the funding for the New Mexico Housing Trust Fund that we've been doing since 2023. These are the traditional projects that are funded with severance tax notes over the last several decades, and which will be funded to the extent possible with the proceeds of the SA1 note up to a maximum amount of $538,400,000. In addition, and as was done last year in accordance with House Bill 253, signed into law by Governor Lujan Grisham, is the issuance of the 2025 SA2 note in an amount up to $81,600,000 to provide that additional funding to the Capital Development and Reserve Fund. These funds, in addition to funds already in the Capital Development and Reserve Fund, will be invested by the State Investment Officer, and the investment income will be credited to the Capital Development Program Fund.
which will be available to the legislature for appropriations for capital projects or for transfer to the severance tax permanent fund. Interest on both the SA1 and SA2 notes is not excludable from income tax for federal tax purposes, and therefore projects which may not be suitable for tax exempt funding can be funded through proceeds of these notes. But also projects that could be funded with severance tax notes could be included in the project list, which again, we will bring to you next month in the form of amending resolution to finalize the project list after our due diligence process has concluded. This authorizing resolution is very similar to the authorizing resolutions for prior issuance of notes that you've seen. It does a number of things. It authorizes their issuance and sale to the state treasurer. It provides for the maximum par amount for each note, again, $538,400,000 for the SA1 note and $81,600,000 for the SA2 note. And the maturity dates, the notes mature on the day after their issuance. So we plan to issue these notes on June 26th and then pay off on the following day. It's a Thursday, Friday this time, which is and the calendar was a little wonky this time, so we're not waiting until the last day of the fiscal year to do it. Getting a little bit of a jump on there, but should still be doable. It also authorizes and describes the method of sale for the notes by way of a private sale to the state treasurer. It approves the form of the bond purchase agreements to be used in connection with the sale of the notes to the treasurer, provides the form, terms, and details of the notes, addresses the various projects to be financed with the proceeds of the A1 note, as I said, that resolution will be for you at the June 17th meeting. It pledges amounts in the severance tax funding fund to the payment of the notes and incorporates provisions relating to the execution, delivery, transfer, and exchange of these notes, creates the various funds and accounts necessary for their proper administration, and incorporates provisions relating to the administration of those funds and accounts and the investments of proceeds therein. Similarly to the long-term bonds, it has covenants, including covenants relating to the collection of severance tax and non-extension of time for payment of interest on the notes, and delegates to the executive officer of the board the authority to determine on or before June 24th the actual amount of the notes, such amount not to exceed $620 million. These notes will accrue interest at the rate of the secured overnight financing rate to be determined by the state treasurer as of June 16th, as has been the practice with all severance tax notes issued since 2023. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions from the Lieutenant Governor or members of the board.
Thank you, Luis. Any questions from board members? No questions, additional information from the staff?
Mr. Chair, I don't think so, not at this time.
Okay. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for item number 22 on our bonding programs. I have a motion for approval by Member Lujan. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Member Cassidy. Can we have the roll, please, be called?
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yeah.
Motion passes.
Thank you, and you're on to the last one.
All right, agenda item number 23, I believe we're on.
Correct.
Lieutenant Governor and members of the board. You have before you the authorizing resolution for the state of New Mexico supplemental severance tax note, Series 2025 SB, in the maximum principal amount of $600 million. This note is also one of a series of the short-term bond notes customarily issued by the Board of Finance. But rather than funding legislatively appropriated projects and set-asides, supplemental notes such as these fund only public school capital outlay projects and public school capital improvement projects as directed by the Severance Tax Bonding Act and certified by the Public School Capital Outlay Council. The resolution is otherwise substantially similar to the resolution for the SA notes that you just approved in its structuring of the issuance and sale of the notes, its tax status, and its terms. However, the pledge on the amounts in the severance tax bonding fund for this note are subordinate to the pledge of such funds for senior severance tax notes, and we do not anticipate a need for an amending resolution for this note next month. And just as with the 2025 SA notes, the interest rate will be SOFR plus 15 basis points as determined on June 16th. With that, I'll answer any questions from the board.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? Seeing no questions, Ashley, do we have any additional information?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just very briefly, we have to, in this situation, we're running numbers basically up until the sale to see what we actually will be able to sponge up for the supplemental note, as well as for the senior note. And so we still have 1 month of oil and gas revenues to come in, plus a couple of deposits of interest earnings, which are around 14 million right at this point in time each per month. So what we're actually, my numbers are looking, we probably will have a little bit closer to 530 million for public school capital outlay projects, but we set that maximum principal amount a little bit higher. But again, that's subject to, we'll have a final amount at the time of the sale, but just wanted to let the board know of those numbers being run and what we're kind of thinking we may land at in June.
Okay, thank you. Any questions based on that information? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion. We have a motion from Member Trevisani. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Member Cassidy. Can we have a roll? Please do poll.
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yeah.
Member Lujan.
Yeah.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you for being here with us. Luis, just sending my best to your dad. I look forward to going to visit him now that he's back home. So
Thank you very much.
thank you. All right, we'll go on to the next item. We're gonna have an item number 24. We're still under bonding program, but we're gonna have Ashley guide us through this preliminary official statement for City of Mexico 7 tax bonds.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members, I have Ken Guckenberger from QTAC Rock with us virtually on this, and I'm going to kick it over to him very quickly. But just wanted to introduce this item. This is our disclosure for the severance tax bond series 2025A, the resolution that the board just approved under item number 21. So with that, I will kick it over to Ken to walk the board through the document. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ken Guckenberger. I'm from QTAC Rock, and we serve as disclosure counsel to the State Board of Finance. Before you today is a draft of a preliminary official statement that we will use to sell the severance tax bonds, which you've just approved previously in the meeting. And much like in March when we presented on the GO bonds POS, this is a draft that we will update the board with a red line and black line as we get closer to finalizing. So that is that is what is before you. Generally speaking, we are seeing good trends in this credit in terms of senior bonds. We have a senior and subordinate bonds. The subordinate bonds go away in 2026, I believe. And so we are seeing improved credit ratings or coverages in this particular credit. There are a few holes. We're still working with Energy, Minerals, Natural Resources Department on trying to get some of the latest severance tax, oil and gas data that gets granular. So that'll be something we will be supplementing. But in general, what this preliminary official statement is describing to the bondholder is what the credit is, what the bond resolution is pledging, where we stand with our coverage, our debt service requirements, and as we get further down the road, we'll put preliminary numbers that get close to the 292 or whatever our final par amount of 292 million is in. We'll also cover the severance tax revenues, specifically the natural gas productions, oil productions, et cetera. This is, again, similar to what you would have seen in format, but just with a slightly different credit structure here because we're pledging the severance taxes. So that is effectively in the big picture what we are approving. I think technically speaking, Lewis's bond resolution approved the POS and continuing disclosure, but this is our state document. This is what we are telling the bond market. We are selling, so we have an ongoing duty to update it, and that's part of our annual financial information filing that you see us every December, January updating. So I don't know if anybody has any specific questions here, but I'm glad to field them or defer to Ashley as you see fit.
Thank you for that, Ken. Do we have any questions from board members? Member Cassidy?
Governor, just a statement. Thank you. This is great. So I know staff and everyone at the state works on this with Ken, and just a great document. Looking forward to seeing the completed one, and just amazing the amount of resources we have here with oil and gas. It clearly is a great story to tell. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no additional questions, Ashley, do you have additional information to add?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members, just briefly, I believe our schedule calls for us to be concluding the preliminary official statement on June 2nd. Mr. Guckenberger may have mentioned that. So as you review this, if you see anything, I know there's still a few tiny bits that are going to be added, but if the members in reviewing it have any questions or comments, we have until June 2nd to take those or incorporate those, so you can share them with myself and Mr. Guckenberger, as we have done in the past with other preliminary official statements. But I know I work to a schedule, so knowing that June 2nd date, I thought would be helpful. So yeah, I think that's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further questions, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Move approval.
We have a motion for approval by Member Cassidy. We have a second. We have a second by Member Lujan. We can have a roll, please, be called.
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales.
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're gonna go on to item number 25 through 28. They're gonna be staff items. Number 25, I'm gonna go ahead and yield to Ashley to walk us through that and then to explain the process that may or may not be taking place.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members. So item number 25 is a request from staff for approval from the board of the finalist award and approval of the contract for arbitrage services with delegation to staff to finalize that contract and submit it to the Contracts Review Bureau for approval. Let me pull up my notes very briefly. So staff did provide via direct email to each individual board member the evaluation committee report resulting from this procurement. So this procurement began on March 6th. That's when the RFP was issued for arbitrage services for a 4-year term beginning July 1st, 2025. Proposals were due March 26th. And then the notice of the RFP was sent directly to 5 firms that are known to provide arbitrage services for municipal debt lenders, and then was sent to other vendors that elect to receive any procurements that flow through the Department of Finance Administration. And I served as the procurement manager for this procurement. And again, as I mentioned, the evaluation committee report was provided separately to all of the board members. We also did brief, I believe, almost all of the board members following receipt of required confidentiality agreements. We briefed all the board members on the result of that procurement. And so the board members have the evaluation committee report and the final scoring. And what I would mention at this time is that with that information provided, the evaluation committee is recommending VLX as the finalist and the awardee of the contract. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would just conclude by saying that If the board would like to have a more in-depth conversation or ask questions on specifics of the procurement process or the proposal, we would need to go into executive session to do that, if that's what the board would like, just because it is an ongoing and active procurement. But that is something that the board could elect to do if they would like to ask more detailed questions on the proposal or procurement.
Thank you for that, Ashley. I'll go ahead and open it up to board members. Any discussion, and if we see that there is a necessity to go into an executive session, we'll go into that one. Seeing none from members of the board, I want to make sure, Senator Sanchez, that you're good to proceed.
Mr. Governor, I'm satisfied with the report that I've received and reviewed it thoroughly, and I don't have any questions or concerns. I trust the staff tremendously.
Thank you for that, Senator Sanchez. With that, Ashley, these are staff items, so action is not needed on these items, is that correct?
Actually, Mr. Chair, all 4 of the staff items this month are action items to allow staff to proceed with all of these items.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for item number 25, finalist award and approval of contract.
I would so move, Mr. Chair, Governor. I would move
Thank you,
to.
Senator Sanchez. Yeah, motion to approve by Senator Sanchez. Do we have a second? Senator Sanchez, Member Lujan, gives a second. We can have the roll, please be called.
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you for that. We're gonna go on to item number 26, initiation of rulemaking process for considerations of grocery tax increments, dedication pursuant to the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act, Chapter 3, Article 60, and the MSA.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members, this and the following 2 items are somewhat administrative and pretty procedural. Staff is just requesting, under these 3 items, but specifically for number 26, approval to begin initiating the rulemaking process. In this case, this is for the promulgation of a rule, related to the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act and the board's responsibilities under that act to consider gross receipts tax increment dedications to metropolitan redevelopment areas, when requested. We have been, I will say the board has approved in the past, a contract with the Rhodey Law Firm to begin drafting that rule. We have been doing that work. We are closing in on concluding that. So all we have is really kind of a working draft of the rule. We have received subject matter expertise on the content of that rule. So we do anticipate it going forward and publishing the rule and scheduling the public hearing in the next few months with probably a fall action item coming to the board to approve the rule following that public hearing. And I know Mr. Carrasco is here is representing us on that contract. We anticipate that contract bleeding into fiscal year 26, as I just mentioned, but this truly is just a formality of approving and having on the record that the board has provided staff the authority to begin the process of actually publishing that public notice and moving forward with the rule promulgation.
Thank you, Ashley. Any questions on item number 26? Seeing no questions, can I entertain a motion, please, for item number 26?
Move approval, Governor.
We have a motion to approve by Member Cassidy. Do we have a second?
A second.
Member Trevisani with the second. Do we have the roll be called?
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And we'll go on to the next item. That's going to be item number 27 on the staff items. Initiation of rulemaking process for revisions of real property acquisition, sales, trades, and leases.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members. So you just heard my spiel about the formality of this request. This particular rule was actually just repealed and replaced by the board, I want to believe at the end of 2024. But during the legislative session, there was statutory changes to the statute that governs this rule. And thresholds were increased for leases and property dispositions that come to the board and state agencies for approval. So what we have here is we're anticipating updating this rule essentially to reflect those statutory changes. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Ashley. Any questions from board members? You see no questions, can I entertain a motion? I have a motion for approval. Member Lujan, we have a second.
Second.
We have a second by member Cassidy. Can we have the roll, please, be called?
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yeah.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Now we go to the next item, that's gonna be item number 28, initiation of rulemaking process, bond project disbursements.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members, so this rule would likely be a repeal and replacement. This is 2.61.6 NMAC. As you mentioned, Mr. Chair, the bond project disbursement, we call it the bond project disbursement rule. This rule governs how state agencies and even local public bodies submit bond proceed draw requests or reimbursement requests from the division. And we have, under Deputy Director Trujillo's leadership, put forth new systems that have automated that process quite a bit. I would like to say that we have only received glowing feedback on this process. It's really created a lot of efficiencies for our state agencies and for the division itself. But with that, we have a few provisions in the bond project disbursement rule that need to be updated to reflect some of those new processes, such as documents that need to be attached to the request and that kind of thing. And so again, this would just be to align the rule with existing and new processes at the division level.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions from board members? Any additional information, Ashley or Marcos? I just have one question. So on some of these, would these be able, is there a reason why they couldn't be considered on consent agenda items?
Mr. Chair, these probably could have been, I think, on the rulemaking process. So yes, we could have probably put those on there.
Some type of
No, I think I definitely wanted to make sure that item number 26, we had an opportunity to share that off consent. But no, we have no concerns about this. It is a formality, so.
Thank you. We can have the roll. Wait, did I jump ahead right there? Did I ask for a motion yet? No motion.
Require a motion. No motion, right?
It does.
Okay. We have a motion for approval of item number 28.
So moved.
We have a motion by member Trevisani. Do we have a second? We have a second. Can we have the roll, please be called?
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Morales,
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Member Cassidy,
Yes.
Member Trevisani,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And that leads us to the last section. That's going to be informational items. So we're done with action items. Informational items that will be presented by staff. And then I want to say thank you again to the staff, the work you've done, the continual work that you've done, especially when we talk about a lot of the contracts, these discussions, and then emergency funds and some of the changes that have come in within the last, just the last few weeks. Thank you for them, and hand it over to you for informational items.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll begin with item number 29. I think I'll keep this brief, but I'm absolutely happy if the board would like for me to go into more detail on this legislative report. The reason I say I'll keep it brief is I know in the past 2 meetings, I have reported at a high level on much of the legislation that you have before you today. But this is the 2025 legislative report that staff have prepared for the board. It was provided separately via email yesterday, and you have a printed copy in front of you at each of your stations. But this is just a listing of legislation that was passed during the most recent legislative session that either directly or sort of indirectly impacts or is of interest to the board. And I'll mention the bills very quickly, Mr. Chair and members, and then if anyone has any questions or you'd like me to go into any more detail on any one of these pieces of legislation, just let me know. But starting right off the bat, we have Senate Bill 274, which is the Board of Finance approval for land sales. This was the legislation that I briefed on previously, where the legislature has increased the thresholds for real property dispositions that go to state agencies and the State Board of Finance, as well as the legislature. Those thresholds had not been updated in quite some time. This was an agency bill that Board of Finance and DFA pushed to have passed, and it did. So that was really great, a really great result. House Bill 47 is the next bill. This is the Veteran Property Tax Exemptions Bill. This bill essentially was a bill to enable or enact the constitutional amendments that passed in this last fall for property exemptions for veterans. Senate Bill 481 is the State Fairgrounds District Act. This bill dropped a little bit later in the session, but it creates the State Fairgrounds District as a political subdivision with the intent to support the development and redevelopment of the State Fairgrounds property in Albuquerque. The Board of Finance role under this bill is that we would be approving any bond issuance of that district when it comes forward in the future. So similar to the tax increment development districts, but a little bit different. We wouldn't be approving a increment, a GRT increment, there we go. But we would be approving the issuance of bonds secured by that increment.
If I could, when do you think any request for approval would actually come in front of the board? Would it be in the next year or two, or is it going to be a longer term?
Mr. Chair, Member Cassidy, I'm not entirely sure, but I do know that it's intended to move very quickly. And I do know that the local government division at DFA, the director serves as the treasurer for that, and they've already had meetings to convene that group and look at options for moving quickly on developments. So, yeah. The next item is House Bill 493. This is the Public Finance and Accountability Act. This does have a direct input on the Board of Finance, but it's not through action items taken by the board. But this bill essentially amends or intends to govern the financial and audit requirements for public entities to receive state funding. Right now, there's an executive order that kind of governs whether an entity can receive state funding if it has audit compliance and clean audits. This actually puts into statute requirements and gives DFA the authority to prepare essentially procedures and processes for making sure that entities who maybe aren't audit compliant can still receive public funding, but that they have protections in place to make sure that we are monitoring local entities that receive state funding.
A question, if I could, is the executive order intended to be withdrawn, or will that remain in place?
Mr. Chair, Member Cassidy, I asked that question a couple of weeks ago, and it was unclear at that time. So let me see if there's an update. So,
Mr. Chair, I would anticipate it should withdraw.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Then House Bill 19 is the Trade Ports Development Act. This actually didn't come in at the end of the session, but the Board of Finance came into this statute at the end of the session, I think the day before the session concluded. But this establishes a framework for the designation and development of trade port districts in New Mexico, allowing both public and private partners to propose trade port areas based on transportation infrastructure and labor availability. I think this has been an effort that has been proposed in previous sessions. Where the Board of Finance comes in on this is that we're mandated to review and approve public-private partnership agreements for trade port development, and the DFA Cabinet Secretary must submit an annual report on trade port projects. I don't know how quickly that's moving, but was something that we became aware of towards the end of the session that does have a role for Board of Finance. House Bill 218 is tax changes. This was the TRD omnibus bill for administrative cleanup on taxation statutes. Where this impacted the board is that we did receive explicit authority to promulgate rules relating to the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act. So just gave us a little bit more comfort in moving forward on that rule promulgation. Senate Bill 357 is the Essential Services Development Act. This establishes the Essential Services Development Act and serves as enabling legislation for a constitutional amendment that passed in 2022 that allowed for public funds to go towards essential projects such as water, broadband, wastewater to residential properties. This doesn't directly impact the Board of Finance, but should future projects that are considered essential services projects come to the legislature and be funded with bond proceeds, we may have to review the availability or ability to fund with tax exempt bonds or look at potentially other funding sources for those types of projects. Senate Bill 401 is the broadband for education bill. This essentially moved all public school education broadband funding and efforts from Public School Facilities Authority and Public School Capital Outlay Council over to the Office of Broadband. They received $10 million a year in our supplemental severance tax note proceeds to fund broadband for public school projects. And so this really was just an administrative shift so that you now have the Office of Broadband running that versus the Public School Facility Authority. Senate Bill 425 is the capital outlay reauthorization bill. This is a bill we see every year. In this bill, we did see an increase in reauthorized severance tax bond funded projects, about 153 in total of 100, and that totaled 106.4 million. There was also 17 million reauthorized for supplemental severance tax note projects that go to PED for school bus improvements and purchases. And we worked with tax counsel and bond counsel in reviewing that bill prior to veto period. So we are looking at enhancing some of our due diligence on those reauthorized projects to make sure that they spend quickly now that they have a little extra time to do so. And then House Bill 450 was the capital outlay project bill. As we mentioned earlier in earlier items, this included 292 million in tax bonds for 27 capital projects. House Bill 206 is the water project funds bill. This comes annually, and this just establishes the projects to be funded by NMFA's through NMFA's water project funds. So our water earmark that we include in our senior severance tax note that the board just approved the resolution for, those projects are also approved at the legislative level. So we sell the funding, but the legislature does have a role in approving which projects are funded with that earmark. And this bill lays out those projects. And then finally, I think House Bill 2 is the General Appropriations Act of 2024. I include this because this is where the board receives its annual emergency funding, and we did receive $4 million in our emergency operating fund for fiscal year 26 and $109,900 in our emergency water fund, which is what we've received for the past 2 years. So this will be the third year of that. But I wanted to note that in section 5 of special, which is the special appropriations of House Bill 2, the board received an additional $2 million in emergency funding for basically now through the end of fiscal year 26. And you'll see in the agenda, we have started listing that as special appropriation amount separately so that the board and staff can keep track of the balances from that special appropriation for emergency requests. With that, Mr. Chair, I said I was going to be really brief and then I just went straight into it. So thank you for your patience. I get so excited about these legislative changes.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ashley. Are there any questions from members of the board?
Just a statement. It's amazing to sit on a board with such great staff supporting the work all the way through. Amazing work.
I agree. Any other questions, comments? So actually just, well, I guess that you went through and you were able to present that. I know that we'll have discussions as far as when we talk about all the needs that come in front of us. And we see this continually, so I'm looking forward to having more of those discussions to assist these, especially rural communities, mutual domestics, these type of entities.
Yes, Mr. Chair, absolutely.
Okay, we'll go on to any other additional information on that.
No, Mr. Chair.
We'll go on to the next item.
So item number 30, Mr. Chair, members, and actually the next few items I provide sort of a high level report, but if the board has any questions or wants me to go into any detail, I will either take those back to the entity that submitted these informational items, or we can always invite them to present to the board in June. But item number 30 is the Housing New Mexico Housing Trust Fund third quarter report for fiscal year 25. This reports on their activity and use of the earmark funds that are provided. They've received 2 years of earmark funds. This can be found on page 1732 of your board packets. But as of the third quarter of fiscal year 25, MFA has issued about $37,530,000 or 100% of the funding they received for fiscal year 24. They've awarded 97% of that, and they've expended 59%. And then for the fiscal year 25 earmark allocation, they've issued procurement for 100% of that, which was $34,620,000. They've awarded 99% of that and expended 35% of that. So they're actually moving a little bit more quickly on the fiscal year 25 funds than they had on the fiscal year 24, which I think was really good information in the report. They also track their program income earned from activities within the fund, and as of the end of March, they had earned about 1.35 million in income activity, of which they've awarded 252,800. And in your board packets, Housing New Mexico has provided quite a bit of detail on the expenditure of those funds and which programs, and they've broken it out by fiscal year. We'll not stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? Any no questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so item number 31 is the General Services Department Capital Buildings Repair Funds Financial Status Report for the month ended April 30th, 2025. This is on page 1750 of your packets. For April, GSD had expended 33.3 million, or about 81.8% out of a total of 41 million in awards. Revenues into the fund for April totaled 1.6 million, which is about what they've been tracking, and expenditures totaled $660,504. The balance in the fund to date was 45.8 million, with 29.7 million uncommitted. They also report on their interest earnings and miscellaneous income, which was just over 1 million for fiscal year to date. With that, I will stand for any questions. Their report does provide some specifics on projects that they're funding as well as timeline.
Thank you for that. Any questions? No questions.
The next item, Mr. Chair and members, is the General Services Department Legislative Capital Projects Financial Status Report for the month ended April 30th of 2025. This is on page 1754. And for April, there was about a total of 224.9 million, or 56% expended out of a total of 490 million of projects that GSD is managing in which they receive capital appropriations for. So they have about 490 million in capital dollars provided by the legislature, and they've expended about 46% of that. The amount that they expended in April did increase by, it looks like about 10 to 12 million from the previous month. They also have more detail in their report on specific capital outlay projects that they're overseeing, and they're getting ready to receive a chunk more from our Series 2025A STB sale. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
I just noted, if I could, that CFYD seems to be the only projects that aren't advancing, right? I don't know if there's a story beyond that, but I know they're not here.
Mr. Chair, Member Cassidy, I will kick that question over to Deputy Secretary Silva, who I'm confident will be able to give me a little bit of an update on that. One of the things that I'm trying to do and incorporate in sort of this review is looking at their timeline report, because they are good at showing which projects are behind, which ones are not. And so I will reach out to Deputy Secretary Silva to get more information on that.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
All right, Mr. Chair, so moving on to item 33, this is the State Treasurer's Office investment report. There's two reports in here for the board. The report from months ended February and months ended March of this year. I'm going to go very briefly over this. I know that Vicki Hanges-Wistow is going to be with us next month to give her quarterly report, which I think will be very informative, and she'll be able to go into a lot more detail. But at the end of January, the State Treasurer managed 17.2 billion in assets. During the month, the office earned approximately 57.2 million from its investment positions, and on an unrealized and mark-to-market basis, the portfolio has increased by 12.1 million. And then in February, they managed 17.5 billion, so slight uptick. And during the month, they earned 54.7 million from their investment positions, with an unrealized mark-to-market basis on the portfolios increasing by 41.1 million. So still seeing some really positive returns at the State Treasurer's Office, but again, Ms. Hanges will be in person next month or virtually to provide the quarterly report on the activity they've seen for the last 3 months. And that concludes that presentation.
Thank you for that. Any questions? Seeing no questions?
Almost there, Mr. Chair. So item number 34 is our emergency balances report. As of today, this is on page 1967 of your board books. And as I mentioned, we are now tracking that additional special appropriation for fiscal year 26 and the remainder of 25 at 2 million. But in our operating reserve, we have $1,621,056.57 left, with no balance remaining in our emergency water fund. This reflects numerous awards and grants that the board has approved this year. Primarily, we had a large request from the town of Silver City that just came in March at the board's last meeting. The Bernalillo County Metropolitan Court, the Village of Columbus, Casas Adobes Mutual Domestic Water Consumers Association, and Cañada de los Alamos Mutual Domestic Water Consumers Association. I would like to mention that we are collaborating very closely now with DFA's local government division as well as the infrastructure division to sort of create a single point of contact for emergency requests at DFA that then we can triage and determine which funding source may be best for those emergencies. We are aware of numerous emergencies and anticipate quite a few at next month's board meeting, including an increased or an additional request from Casas Adobes Mutual Domestic. I do anticipate a request from what's the county down south, Marcos?
Grant County and Silver City.
Grant County and Silver City.
I saw it listed 30.
Yep. And then we just received a request or an inquiry from Ruidoso in Lincoln County for silt removal in their river. We know of a JAL emergency request, so I'll keep it short. A lot of requests coming forward. We're going to be working with that internal team to see where we can best fund these emergencies.
Thank you. Any additional questions from staff members?
What is the amount of the appropriation, regular appropriation for emergencies for fiscal year 20? Next year, 26?
4 million. For the
4 million
emergency.
plus whatever is remaining out of the 2.
Yeah.
Yes, forward. Thank you.
Do we have, were there any other questions from board members? Ashley, was that somewhat of a surprise to you when there was an additional 2 million in emergency funds that came in? Were we expecting that?
Mr. Chair, I don't think it was a surprise. I think Secretary Probst did a lot of hard work to try and capture that.
And I figured that was the case, but I do want to say thank you, Secretary, for the work that you did there and to make sure, because again, we see the need that's there. So
yes,
thank you. Can you give us an idea as far as what constitutes an emergency? So we have Lincoln County, I believe Chavez County is the other county. You mentioned two counties.
Correct.
No, but you said with the silt removal,
yes.
dealing with that.
With JAL, we do have JAL that is going to come forward, and I'm trying to think of Casas Adobes. And yeah, I have it all listed.
I was thinking specifically of I believe ones that were hit by the fire, hit by the floods.
Mhm.
What would constitute an emergency as opposed to the emergency orders that we sign, which are 750,000 each time?
Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. Mr. Chair, so the board's policy does not require an emergency declaration. We just require that if an entity comes forward, the emergency was unforeseen, that it cannot reasonably await the next legislative session, and that it basically has a significant impact on the services being provided to the community or the community's health and welfare. There's a few other emergency pots. There is an emergency pot that I believe infrastructure division and or local government division oversee that does require an emergency declaration. So like this instance, like with the silt removal for Ruidoso, that actually is an emergency declaration from the fires. So we're looking at whether it would be appropriate for that to come to the board, or maybe one of those other pots could be available. Part of that process is also identifying any federal resources that could be available, not just state funding resources. So that's the difference there. Our emergency pot, we have the policy that governs that, and it's, the board's discretion in with that policy is guidance on which projects should be funded. But really, that's sort of the crux of our emergency policy. And I don't know if I'm answering your question.
And you did, and I think the way that it works, and we've had several emergency declarations, a lot of different funds, especially when you're dealing with FEMA and the slow process of them providing those funds. We issued emergency declarations, and each declaration was at the amount of 750,000. The reason that is because there's such big high-end dollar projects that would be needed. We don't have the capacity to move that money that quickly, so we would do it incrementally. We have that pot of money. So my question with it was that is, and you answered it, we'll probably dive in deeper. So if there's money that can come in, because counties have already sent an emergency declaration, which is the first step. They sent it to us as the counties call it a declaration. We approved that, 750,000 each time. So For example, the redosifiers took place a little over a year ago, I would think. And we're still issuing emergency declarations on that. So again, 750,000. So the reason I'm asking that is because when we have requests that are coming in, that we can best utilize what funds that we have that isn't going to be spoken for, could be utilized from a different pot. So I know that you guys will work through that to ensure that each community can get that support that they need.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and that was why I think we got a little bit more strategic at DFA in bringing these three divisions together to start, like we basically have a working group and there's a single application in which an entity will come in and give details on the request. And then we have experts in the infrastructure division in particular that are also very familiar with federal funding and federal funding requirements. And then they bring this group together and we start identifying, you know, which pot of money is most appropriate for each request, also given the timeline. And that is something that we run into, like with timeline, is how quickly funding can get out the door. So there's a lot of different considerations we look at in looking at those different funding sources, but we want to match what works best so that one pot isn't getting depleted, you know, when another pot could potentially been used. There are different requirements under the different emergency funding pots.
What about if we have the 2013 executive order that required your audits up to date and accurate? Would any of these communities not be allowed to obtain emergency funds, executive order funds, emergency declarations because of those audits?
Yes, Mr. Chair, great question. So under kind of sort of a multifaceted answer. So under the board's historical practice, we have provided funding if they can identify a fiscal agent, which we have utilized for some of our smaller communities, including in Grant County. I know that the COG there serves as fiscal agent for a couple of the grants that we've provided. But, and I think that that's been a little bit different for the other emergency pot of money, but anticipating that EO might be rescinded and or now that we have 493 coming into play and coming July 1, I think that process will change and we'll be looking at not necessarily having to refuse that funding, but ensuring that they have a fiscal agent in place and that we're also providing assistance to them in order to get them the emergency funding they need, but ensuring protection of the public dollar. And one perfect example right now is Eagle Nest. They are behind on their audits. And so I know again that the infrastructure division at DFA is working very closely with them as well as local government division to get their auditor and get them up to speed because they are looking at some potential emergency requests coming forward.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point that I want to make sure that we make. And I've always struggled with the executive order because I felt that it was rural, small communities, small associations that would be impacted the most, which probably have been. But I struggle with it too, because a lot of times having sat on the finance committee and the legislature, you hear about it's being late, you hear different things and right automatically you tend to think like that entity, that agency isn't doing what they need to be doing. Well, we do have a crisis and we have a crisis when it comes to auditors and having a crisis of these audits to be able to be done. I don't know if it's just a shortage. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think that is a concern that we're probably gonna have to be dealing with in some way or another. So whenever these audits may be late, these audits may not be up to date. It may be part of a bigger problem that is outside of what the local agency or entity can do.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair, and I'm not an expert on what I'm going to comment on next, but I could certainly get more information and Secretary Props may be able to fill in. I do know that DFA is looking at creating a statewide price agreement for auditors to help try and move and get some assistance to those local communities so they can sort of streamline the procurement process at least to get auditors in and get auditors moving. So I know it's small steps, but I think there are a lot of efforts from different angles to try and assist with this because I think we're all aware of the need when you have a crisis in place. But you also want to make sure that the entity can handle and manage the funding appropriately.
Well, thanks for that. Good. I think that's a good way to finish up the meeting. I think good information. And then we can continue to provide for the needs of our state.
And Mr. Chair, we have 2 additional information. I have to bring it to the team. You tried, but Would you like me to proceed with this? Okay. Item number 35 and 36 will be very short. 35 is our standard reporting on our fiscal agent custodial bank fees report, which is page 1969 in your board packets. In April, the board continued to realize large negative net fees for our fiscal agent and treasury services, driven by our 2.5% earnings credit rate, which Wells Fargo stated they're maintaining at least in the near future. Our gross fees were $115,288, which is a little bit higher, but understandably so because we have tax returns going out. And so we always see a slightly larger increase in our fees in March, April, May. And then our custodial bank fees report varies very little, and the fees landed at $14,546 in March, which is the most recent month that we have paid fees for. And would you like me to proceed with the final item?
Please do, thank you.
Yes, item number 36 is our standard reporting of the joint powers agreements approved by the Department of Finance and Administration. This is for the months ended March 31st of 25 and April 30th. It is one report in your packet, although we do have February's in there, so apologies for that confusion. But the first page, which is page 1972, should give you all the JPAs approved. We had 4 approved across March and April. We had the Department of Cultural Affairs entering into a JPA with the city of Deming. This is specifically the Historic Preservation District division of DCA. And it's for the funding of the historic preservation project, specifically addressing windows at the Deming Armory, which is a state register of cultural property site. And then we had 2 JPAs between New Mexico School for the Deaf, School for the Blind and Visually Impaired. And that's between Cobre Consolidated School District and Magdalena Municipal School District. And that's for provision of services to students with vision-related impairments. And with that, Mr. Chair, I think that's it.
Thank you. Are there any questions from board members? Senator Sanchez, any questions in the comments?
No, just, again, just thank the staff for all the hard work that they do and how efficient they are. I just can't say enough about them. Thank you very much. And to the rest of the board, thank you, members, as well. You've done a great job, as always.
I agree, staff, you guys are amazing. Thank you for all that you do. Was there anything statutorily that required at all of our meetings? Yeah, the cabinet.
Mr. I don't believe so.
Can I just put it out there, Housing New Mexico, I don't know if they did present, they have a brand new facility. It's pretty amazing. And if at some point that we want to have a meeting there, I think it'd be just somewhat of a nice change, but it truly is an amazing location. I remember Cassidy was working about a month ago there, and just putting some thought out there.
Or Mountain.
Well, that's an invitation to you. Can't have a forum, so you're the one that has to sacrifice.
I know, I will make the sacrifice.
Yeah. With that, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn. Yeah, the motion adjourned. Seeing nobody in objection, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good day, everybody. Take care.